What up, freedom-loving people of the world, the UK, the USA tuning in. Today we're going to do a treatment of the general election that just happened in the UK yesterday and was counted last night. And what else?
This is episode 50. The big 5-0.
The big 5-0 of the Scottish Liberty podcast. Tam was recently 50 years old himself. Indeed. So if you want to send him a present, you can get our details.
Yeah, something to make me look more youthful. I walked from the bus station here today, and I was looking in the windows as I was walking along the street, and I thought, who's that old guy stalking me? Yeah, it's not good coming on here. So yeah, but anyway, there's so many reasons to celebrate good times. Surely not. Right. You know, Theresa May failed to get a majority. That means the lefties are cock-a-hoop with delight. However, the fact of the matter is they didn't win.
Well.
Right.
Also, I just want to mention the show is a year old.
Episode 50. The show's a year old. I'm 50. Well, I'm going to make that a good thing, even though it's maybe not necessarily.
Life begins at 50.
Does it get any better?
It does get any better because we've got an edition of our podcast. So the Tories, the Conservative Party, for those of you in the States, did not get a majority in Parliament. They failed to do that by getting 10 seats. They were 10 seats short of a majority.
The gamble did not pay off.
They had to form a coalition with the DUP, which
they will be forming a coalition with the DUP, Democratic Unionist Party of Ulster.
And what are they into? What are they all about?
They're into Ulster a lot. They always say no to anything progressive. Oh, that's probably a good thing. Anything progressive. They're basically conservatives.
Okay.
You had, the conservative. The full title of the Tory party is the Conservative and Unionist Party of Great Britain.
Right.
So the DUP are unionists, but there was some fallout a while back, just because I think it dates back to the first home rule thing of Northern Ireland, with the first storm at Parliament and things like that, and falling out with the British over the whole Irish question. However, they're basically just conservatives, but sort of ramped up to 11 because there's a religious aspect. Most Democratic Unionists, I would hazard, I guess, maybe even all Democratic Unionists are Syrian Protestants. So
this
Ulster Protestants
election in particular was one of the most prominent examples of turd sandwich versus great giant douche.
Yeah,
I'm not sure which one was which, but
perhaps our viewers could let us know.
From a libertarian perspective, at least,
and listeners,
and the perspective of our listeners, neither was a particularly good option for liberty-minded people.
No.
That might shock those left-wingers listening into this.
I was so shocked. Oh, my hair fell out.
Corbyn was bringing a grassroots revolution, but here's the thing: Corbyn was looking pretty good on foreign policy, and he has a far better record for civil liberties than most members of his own party.
Okay. Could you give us an example of that?
Well, he would say be one of the people who was against detention without trial and the ID cards. In favour of allowing gay marriage, and generally a sort of liberty-minded person when it comes to the civil stuff. He did. But
was he liberty-minded in terms of people that he felt sympathy for? I mean, would he be against internment and all these other things if it was extreme right terrorists or extreme right-wingers who were, is he for liberty per se?
We don't really have that information because there's been no test case, but it seems like he's an old lefty, and for them it was kind of a principle. Now that might be dated back to when they saw themselves as in the minority, so freedom of speech was a very important thing to them. But the old left, they're quite different from the new left. I think the biggest difference is that the old left saw wealth as a good thing, whereas the new left think it's wealth that's destroying the environment and it's inequality, and we live such shallow, meaningless consumerist lives.
I know I do.
Yeah, right. So I think he was a principled person. I think he was a good person. Even though I disagree with him fervently on economic issues, what I think is the most disappointing thing about the election is, given that we had a card-carrying socialist, not namby-pamby third-way fence sitter,
not Tory light,
in the Labour Party. What I was hoping for is that this would spark off a big debate in this country about capitalism versus socialism, which of course it didn't do.
No, because the left think they've won that debate already.
But the Conservatives didn't even show up to the fight. They could have,
because they're ashamed of capitalism.
The Conservative Party.
It sounds like a joke, but it's not. Yeah.
Right. Here's my point. See, Conservatives are wrong when they say, well, capitalism isn't a perfect system, but it's the best we've got, or it's the most successful we've got.
Okay.
They're wrong. Capitalism is not the most successful system. It's the only successful system. Even countries that have a mixed economy are only successful because of the capitalist part of the economy. All of the countries that have tried to abolish free markets have ended up having to have some form of exchange. Lenin made a bunch of compromises in the Soviet Union because the Soviet Union would have collapsed without markets. The only reason why countries like Cuba and Venezuela survive at all is because they have some form of free exchange. In other words, capitalism. So please, Conservatives, stop saying that capitalism is the most successful system. It's not. It's the only successful system. All hybrid systems only work because they have a capitalist element to it. So that's my rant. I just want to get that out there. So what we really needed in this country is a Conservative, who, by the way, I've never
What we needed in this country was stable and, what was it, leadership? What was it Theresa May's been banging on about for the last...
Stable leadership.
Yeah, stable and consistent leadership or something like that. But anyway, we didn't get that, because she's... and there was, I don't know if you listen to the election results as they came in last night?
No. I did what I'd much rather do, which is go to a bar and speak to strangers.
Okay.
And
female strangers?
Some of them female, some of them male.
Okay.
But you just never know. You just never know.
Now, well, would you never know whether they're male or female?
Well, nowadays with all these trigger warnings and social justice and blah blah blah, you might get in that situation. My point is that what we really needed was the Conservatives to come out and bring the facts to bear on Singapore, Hong Kong, India, China, and just really they could have won if they hammered home this guy's a proper hardcore socialist and just used facts, reason,
instead of
evidence.
derision. And
the Labour opposition was so weak that it made the Conservatives shitter than they already are and have been. And I think that the point is that with pressure, with strong opposition, Theresa May would have had to sell conservatism differently. She could have said, we represent a new form of conservatism. We don't want the government to be in bed with big business. We want the government out your personal life. You know, a sort of old school American style conservatism, as opposed to the corporate crony. The Conservatives are really great at living up to their reputation as a bunch of elitists who don't care about the poor and just serve the interests of the rich and powerful. That is the reputation they have, and they do nothing at all to fight it. People need to hear the compassionate face of free market capitalism. They need to hear the statistics on poverty and how capitalism is solving poverty all over the world and so forth. So there's my first couple of rants. Over to you.
Well, I tend to agree. The only thing I would say that sort of intrigues me about this DUP thing. Now, traditionally, Sinn Féin returned 7 candidates in Ulster. Sinn Féin, which is basically used to be the political wing of the old provisional IRA, and so they traditionally, although they win seats in the UK Parliament, they don't take those seats up. That's been their principle up until now. I'm just wondering, with the DUP going to be forming, part of the government with the Tories, jumping in the bed with the Tories to form to get the majority. I'm wondering if because Corbyn has links with Sinn Féin, because he's been sympathetic to Sinn Féin, because he's been sympathetic even to the IRA in the past, I'm just wondering if the Sinn Féin might not, sort of decide for once to take up their seats in Parliament to see if they can, offset that DUP thing. I mean, it's only 7 MPs, but it's another 7 sort of voice.
Oh, yeah, we're back. Sorry for that cut out.
Yeah, sorry, that was obviously MI5 interfering with our broadcast.
Well, the thing is, we've got more viewers online now than when we first.
Excellent. So instead of losing a viewer, we got one. See, there's a thing. The world's full of unexpected circumstances. Today, Theresa May, she thought she was going to win huge style, and then lost her majority. And now we thought we were going to lose all our watchers. Oh no, we're back down to 8 again. We're spooked number 9.
Okay, so
so we're talking about Theresa May.
That Theresa May was sounding autocratic and basically like she was going to do it all. If you look at her record on civil liberties, it's pretty terrible.
It's pretty awful.
So she is an autocrat.
Yeah.
She alienated the fuck out of me when she said we have to be on guard for the libertarian right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which, by the way, I actually hold Labour kind of to blame for this, because if Labour were providing a strong opposition to the Conservatives would have to adopt more libertarian policies to be modern, to be contemporary. They need to...
Well, you would think that, but I don't know that they automatically would.
Okay, they might
I mean,
not.
there's been a stronger Labour opposition in the past. I don't think that's been
but
fair.
that's the thing. But they didn't have to go free market. But
they didn't have to go full Rothbard.
They didn't have to go full Rothbard because in those days, no one knew the difference. Okay. But people have access to information. I think it was a political blunder because libertarianism is on the rise, and especially on the rise amongst the young. So if she wants to look after the future of the party, she needs to say, you know, we're not Puritans, we're not traditionalist conservatives, we're free marketeers, we want an even playing field. And I don't know, I think Theresa May lost because the Labour opposition was so poor, the Tories did not put their back into the election.
Yeah, absolutely. And they completely underestimated Jeremy Corbyn,
exactly.
And they completely overestimated their own ability to win.
And I disagree with you. I think that it was that she didn't need to call the election. I actually thought it was an excellent decision.
Okay.
Because
well, it turns out it wasn't. Though.
Well, yeah, that's because they didn't fight it. Labour was really weak when she called the election, so it was an excellent way to win if they turned up to the fight.
Yeah, but they didn't need to do it in order to achieve it. Right, the whole thing was Brexit, hard Brexit. Let's get it done.
I thought it was to get legitimacy because she wasn't.
But she had legitimacy, right? Well,
she wasn't elected. So.
But there's a precedent for this. Ted Heath done this before, and everybody mentioned this. Well, I certainly mentioned it before this election. I mean, look, there's a precedent here. She could end up losing her majority out of this.
She did.
And she did. You know, because Ted Heath went, well, this is to see, I wanted to be confident, to see who's running the country. And the electorate went, well, we thought you were, and clearly you're not. So I think she should have just took the thing by the scruff of the neck and went ahead,
Okay.
All this idea that she didn't have any legitimacy, does she have legitimacy now?
Well,
yes, and I agree. She could have been a better fighter,
right? But what I'm noticing is this, the swelling of sentiment on Facebook over the last couple of weeks. It's been such a bore. Sorry if I'm a bit bored of politics, but people really are still invested in changing the world through political action. And as my friend Darren said, look, if you want your life to be good, you ain't going to get it by ticking a box, by putting a cross in a box. You need to make your life good. But people have so much faith that if you just get the right person into power, things are going to change for the better. So I've got a riddle for you, right? And I feel like everyone who's going to vote should be asked this question, right? One of these.
By the way, I spoiled my ballot.
Okay.
Yeah.
I voted actually. I voted for the Liberal Democrats because they seemed the least worst out of my possible options. But they also had no chance of winning in my constituency, so it was a real protest vote.
Okay.
So
who's the worst? Who's worse here? I spoiled my ballot. He voted for
I used to be a complete agorist before I met this asshole, and he pulled me back into political action.
Blame me, man.
Yeah.
Have you no agency? Have you no agency? Right,
no,
okay. That's the feminine side.
I've just been shaped by society. I'm like Marx's proletariat.
You're just clay, just putty in society's hands.
It's the material forces.
They could have made a better job.
It's the material forces of production which molded my personality in accordance with my class interests.
Okay, society is to blame.
Do you know this? Do you know that Marx basically believed that the type of tools they were using to produce goods in a society were basically going to be the defining features and shaping people's personalities?
I also know that he said, these are my principles, and if you don't like them, I have some more. Sorry, that's the wrong Marx, isn't it?
All right. Yeah, it's kind of an insane position when you consider that the material forces of production are created by the human mind. So how can they create the human mind? Mind boggles. So, okay, one of these things is impossible, right? Tax more, spend more. Tax less, spend less. tax more, spend less, or tax less and spend more. Which of those four things is impossible?
I've already forgot what the first three were. In fact, now I forgot what the last one was. Right. So then go through them again.
You could tax more and spend more. You could tax less and spend less. You could tax more and spend less, or you could tax less and spend more. One of those is impossible.
Tax less, spend more?
Well, see, you'd think that, but actually it's a trick question.
I fucking knew that. I knew it would be, right?
Both of the options.
God, I hate that.
Both of the options that say spend less are impossible, because it's impossible for governments to spend less. Sorry, because the whole institution of government is vested in giving people favors in order to win votes or campaign contributions. You never stand to gain from spending less. Well, I guess
I've got something to say on that.
Go on.
All through the night, the reports were coming in, every constituency, but especially, guess where? The university towns.
Right.
Record numbers of young people, especially students, are all turning out. And who were they voting for?
Jeremy Corbyn.
Why?
Because he wanted to give them free tuition.
There you go. If there was ever an argument against democracy, this election's it. Because yeah, it's absolutely looting. We will promise to thieve money from other people and give it to you if you vote for us.
It is so
That's
true.
democracy.
But don't you think that the Conservatives could do a much better job if they came out and said, look, you can get your free education, but it's going to be really poor because there's no market forces at work or competition. We want you to get a great education. We want you to get a cheap education.
Yeah, online.
And our way of doing that is by allowing more people to open universities so that there's market competition. Tuition fees will be coming way, way, way down of what they are now when the universities have to compete to offer places, and the standard of tuition will go up. You know, but they never say things like that.
No, because what you
do that.
That's right. Because what you might as well say is, don't you think the Conservatives could do a better job as if they just became libertarians?
Yeah.
You know, yes, they could. You know, and that's the problem. And they're not going to become libertarians. You know, they flirt with it. You know, they talk shit about it. And you know, now I've got a rant coming on now, like because like you know, you've got here in Scotland we call them Libertarians, right? You know, and they will, you know, all these young fogies, you know,
Ewan McCarty,
you know, getting about with fucking barber jackets on. You're like, you know, 21-year-old guys with barber jackets and flat caps and fucking brown brogues, you know, young fogey bastards, you know, going on about the virtues of conservatism. It's bollocks, guys. Wake up, you're in a socialist party. You're actually in a socialist party. If you want to get libertarian, you know, it doesn't matter how libertarian you think you can influence the Conservative Party to be, it just won't do it. All that conservative wing of the Scottish Libertarian, of the Scottish Conservative Party, it's not going to matter at all. Your leader, Ruth Davidson, and don't get me wrong, she's done a spectacular job in Scotland of getting people elected. But they only done that by swinging to the left. You know, they ain't swinging to the right, and by cashing in on the unionist vote as well. Okay, we're going to remain part of the UK. I've got a question as well for you libertarians. How pro-union would you be if Jeremy Corbyn had have won this election? What would you think then if suddenly we were plunged into a dark age of a socialist government, a proper socialist government in power in Westminster? Where would you, how pro-union would be then? I'm just curious how pro-union you would be then. So this is the excuse a lot of Scottish Conservatives give for not being libertarians. Oh, you know, it's your stance on Scottish independence and blah, blah, blah. But good news on Scottish independence front and in Scotland. Although the Scottish Tories won many more seats here, the SNP lost 17 seats. I don't know. There was quite a few seats they lost, but the main thing is Angus Robertson has left the building. He has gone. I don't know if he left his seat or whether he just crushed it beneath his massive bulk, but he's gone. The people of Moray decided that he didn't speak for them. Remember when he stood up in Parliament? I had a rant about it way back. He stood up in Parliament and said, the Scottish people, all of them, because he'd spoken to them all, apart from his own constituents, obviously. The Scottish people didn't share Theresa May's views on Brexit. Well, I don't know about that, but certainly your constituents, Angus, have decided that it's cheerio, cheerio, cheerio. And Alex Salmond has gone as well from the Scottish political scene.
Can you just fill in our American viewers on who these people are?
Okay, Alex Salmond is leader of the leader of the Scottish National Party, very successful leader of the Scottish National Party, brought us to the brink of independence, and then Nicola Sturgeon took over, and it was a slightly downhill from there on in. He also took the Scottish National Party on a massive swing to the left. Traditionally, the Scottish National Party were right of centre. As soon as Alex Salmond took over, the party took a massive swing to the left in order to chase Labour, and they've not stopped going in that direction. So that's who Alex Salmond is. Angus Robertson was the lead spokesman for the SNP at Westminster. He was the leader of their group there at Westminster, and he's gone. Fairly articulate, fairly decent in terms of being a politician, but in terms of his views on liberty and his views on free market economics, pretty crap, to be honest with you. So he's gone.
I just want to say a little bit, because I was thinking about this yesterday. I really cannot believe how many people are still socialists. Because, like, I could understand it 10 years ago because we didn't have as good access to information. But I really thought, like, I really believed all that stuff about people in third world countries being poor because we were rich in the West. I thought the two were directly related. And I thought it was because of capitalism. But now that all the information's in, that we're actually helping them become richer, not maybe through colonialism and some other things, we did set the third world back to a degree, and obviously our interventions in the Middle East have set that region back economically, and some of our interventions, but their military interventions in South America might have set their economies back. But look, Chile had a fascist dictator, Pinochet, right? And they're still the most rich, successful country in South America, despite having a fascist dictator. What countries have recovered from socialism the way that Chile recovered from fascism, or
even Spain recovered from fascism,
or Germany recovered from fascism and losing 2 wars? It's like the socialist countries do not recover. Like,
okay, I guess I'll throw in an old fly in the ointment there. I guess Russia.
Okay, yeah, Russia. Okay, Russia, fair enough. And a couple of the...
but that's because they embraced free market economics.
Right. Yeah. So now the argument is so fucking in for capitalism. I'm amazed at how many people still think that socialism is the answer.
We'll never underestimate cognitive dissonance, and never estimate socialist ability to constantly claim. I mean, remember how they used to go on about Venezuela? How it was a shining example, because you go, can you give me an example of a socialist country? Well, Venezuela. They ain't saying that anymore, okay? And suddenly, guess what? Venezuela, that wasn't real socialism.
Of course not.
Right?
Of course not.
And it never flicking is.
That's because there's no such thing as a square circle.
Yeah.
And socialism, as the socialists define it, defies the laws of economics. So you'll never see real communism because it's impossible, the same way that a square circle is impossible. But what annoys me is how much intelligence do you need to get this basic point? See, if only one person is allowed to provide a service, and if you don't like it, you have to pay for it anyway.
Yeah.
How smart do you have to be to know that you're going to get a shit service? It's not enough that the government force you to pay for stuff. They also make it illegal for other people to provide their own version of education, their own version of healthcare, their own roads and railways, their own security services, their own, well, now they let people do their own postal service and stuff like that, but they didn't used to. It's like, How much intelligence do you have to understand that if you're forced to pay for a product, whether you like it or not, you have no weight in that transaction, and what you're going to get is going to be garbage? And I guess the only answer they have is, well, it's okay to have a bit of a worse service so long as everyone else gets it, so long as everyone gets it. Well, then why don't you just have the government provide it to the people who can't afford it? Yeah. Not rather than to everyone. Just have a very limited government and just say, okay, 0.5% of GDP goes to the government, or 1% of GDP goes to the government, and they spend it on the very poorest people in the society and give them vouchers so they can choose between their schools and hospitals.
Why does it automatically have to be government? You know, I'm tired. I'm tired of saying this to leftists. And they go, who's going to look after the poor? Well, you are. Right? Who's stopping you? How would a capitalist society stop you from looking after the poor?
I don't have the resources.
Okay, what about you and all your
rich people?
All right,
the rich people have too much of the resources.
They've got all the pie.
Yeah, they've got all the pie.
Okay.
So that's the one that's kind of hard to get around.
Well, how do you answer this, Antony? Right, because we've made the assertion, and I believe it's true, that the socialists are forever going, that wasn't real socialism, that wasn't real socialism, that wasn't real socialism. However, they make the counter attack that we, whenever they point out, Britain, America, and we say, well, that's not real capitalism.
Well, I think the difference is we can actually measure how free or unfree an economy is. We just go, well, how many regulations are there? How easy is it to start a business without jumping through red tape? How, etc. Whereas their metrics on what real socialism is are very arbitrary, whereas we have very specific measures, right? Can you cut someone's hair without having a hairdresser's license? If yes, then it's a free market. If no, it's not a free market. If you're allowed to trade with any currency you like, then it's more of a free market. If the government is not controlling the interest rates, which of course it is, then it's not. Then it's more of a free market. We can actually point to what makes it not real capitalism. We don't actually have to rely on having an integrous ruler. The socialists really need to get a good guy in government. Well, that's a big risk. We don't need the right person in government. We're saying that the government should step out. So we can accurately measure how capitalist or not capitalist an economy is, but their metrics are so arbitrary. So that's my response to that.
Okay. Can I throw out another question to the Libertarians? How many times do your leaders and your parties have to vote, as Kaz Paul, our Libertarian guy in Fife, has quite adroitly pointed out, how many times does the leadership of your party have to boot you right in the peas before you'll say, okay, enough's enough? This best of a bad bunch bullshit, this kind of, I'm not going to waste my vote, the wasted vote syndrome. The wasted vote syndrome has fucking resulted in more shit governments than anything else, I guess. So how many times does that have to happen? What are you going to do about it? On your watch, Theresa May introduced and tried to introduce some of the most illiberal legislation possible. What did you do about it? Letter. I don't know if have you ever been hit with a stiff letter? It's pretty sore. Yeah. Right.
The thing is, it's like...
Well, I'll tell you what they're going to do.
I think I'm going to join the mafia and try and reform them from inside. The mafia actually...
You'd actually have more success.
The mafia do a lot of charity work.
They do.
They do.
And they started out as a charitable organization.
Yeah, I mean, so maybe we can turn them into the United Way.
Well, why start high? Start with small steps. Yeah. Start with something easy, like joining the mafia and getting them to change.
Right.
And then after you've done that, maybe then you can join the Conservative Party and try and get them to change. That's pie in the sky. Join the mafia first and get them to change. That's much easier than getting the Conservative Party to change.
So what I'd like to say about...
And would you agree with me? We give the Conservatives far too easy a ride in the Libertarian movement.
Well, yeah, for me personally, coming from the left, right, under Bush and that, when I became a Libertarian, I don't think I did until he finished his tenure. Okay. But let's say under at least the first 4 or 6 years of Obama, I really still believe that the right were the biggest threat to liberty. And, you know, even the Ayn Rand Institute, who are terrible on foreign policy, even after 9/11, believed the right were a bigger threat to liberty than the left because of their religiosity and their desire to, you know,
put the world to rights.
Yeah. But then as things wore on, I talk a lot about, you know, socialists being economically illiterate because it seemed to be that this social justice warrior class and economically illiterate people are a massive threat to our economic liberty, no question. So from that, we've been giving the right an easy ride, I would say. And that's just because there's an alliance of convenience against the social justice warrior elements and the worst central planning elements of the left. But yeah, the right they've not championed capitalism.
They've not championed capitalism, and in Scotland they have not championed liberty. On Ruth Davidson's watch, the Tories abstained from the named person legislation. Named person, for those in America who haven't heard this before, named person was an act brought in by the Scottish National Party government that want to give, every time you have a child, anybody in Scotland who has a child, you will have a state guardian, whether you like it or not. You don't have to have done anything. You're assumed guilty from the get-go. So you have a state guardian for your child who will make sure that you as a parent are doing everything that the state thinks that you should be doing for that child. Now, that legislation went through, and the Tories in Scotland, the Conservatives, bravely abstained. Shameful. Shame on you for that. Because, you know, here's what really annoys me about that. What you were doing, you go, well, why would they do that? Why would they abstain? I mean, either you think it's right or you think it's wrong, right? Why, you know, what's not to understand about that legislation? So what were you abstaining for? They were waiting to see what way the wind was blowing. Oh, do the public like this legislation, or are the public against this legislation? If the public like this legislation, if we come out against it, they might not vote for us, and that would be another reason for them not to vote for us. Have you ever heard the principles in the Scottish Conservative Party? Remember principles? Can you actually know? I mean, other than the principle of the union, which you just will not let go of. You hold on like a fucking tick, you know, like a bull terrier to the principle of the union. That's the only principle that you've actually got left, which is maybe why you fight for it so much. But other than that, you don't seem to have any principles other than get elected. And congratulations, you've got elected. Maybe it's to do with you know, Ruth Davidson's publicity stunts. You know, is there anything that woman won't do for a photo op? You know, can you sit in the bull, love? Can you sit in the bull, Ruth? You know, can you get its cock? Can you look as if you're lighting it? That's lovely, lovely. Yeah, do it again, love. Yeah. Can you get your tits out, Ruth? Yeah. Sit in the tank, Ruth. Can you sit in the tank? Can you sit with the gun between your legs like a massive cock? Yeah, that's lovely. That is. Click, 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 click. Is there nothing that woman will not do for a photo opportunity? Please, you know, if you've got any ideas, make a comment and say what Ruth Davidson will not do for a photo opportunity, because there doesn't seem to be anything. Anyway,
so we
love you, Ruthie.
Before we go on,
don't want you to wash you, Gary, me, or whatever it is you do in kickboxing.
So what we had here was
slam me.
The worst side of conservatism, which is basically living up to the reputation of serving the interests of the rich and powerful and hating the poor. They are bad on civil liberties, very, very bad. They are terrible in foreign policy, but what do you expect from conservatives? And they're not championing capitalism.
No.
And that's what
they're
we have on the
ashamed
right.
of capitalism. You know, they talk about it as if it's, whenever they talk about it as if they're talking about masturbation or something, you know?
Right. And on the left, but they don't want to centrally plan the economy. So if there's one saving feature, they don't want to centrally plan the economy.
Apart from the bank. Apart
from the banks. On the left, we have a card-carrying socialist, an old lefty who, has got a good record on foreign policy and civil liberties, but let's say his economic policies will send us back to...
So I keep doing that. We've got a guest, an invited guest, we've got a fly buzzing.
So the question is, is this almost, there's this hung parliament where the Conservatives have to form a union, a coalition with a small party. Is that the best result that Libertarians can hope for? Because maybe this will allow these two parties to moderate one another's excesses.
Well, in theory, I don't know. Well, okay, you could argue that the last coalition was successful, utilitarian-wise, you know. And I think a lot of people will probably be looking back at the Clegg-Cameron coalition as quite a successful time, and not as bad as people thought it was. And people on the left, I think, will realise that you know, the Lib Dems were able to rein in. Could you not yawn? Could you not yawn when I'm doing my fucking monologue or whatever it is the fuck I do?
Nothing personal. Nothing personal.
Fucking hell, like that is right out of the order. Okay, right. Right, I mean, just I don't know, don't even cover your mouth. I don't know, walk away or something. That would be slightly less embarrassing. Anyway, where was I? I've lost my train of thought now. You fuck.
So you think?
Yeah, they reined in what the left would term the Conservatives. Now, I wouldn't necessarily agree. I would have liked more austerity, right? Right. Proper austerity.
But do you not think that? I was left with the impression that the Conservatives really were cutting things that were quite trivial in terms of spending, but to the most vulnerable segments of society.
Yeah, they're snipping around the edges.
Let's say the amount of money they snipped out of the debt. I think they increased the deficit, didn't they? They did.
Yeah.
So they increased the deficit.
They increased public spending.
So
massively.
But the cuts,
but just not in the places where lefties wanted it.
Yeah, but the cuts that they made were to people who. Yeah, but they also did make cuts to people who are quite vulnerable and dependent on the welfare system. And I'm not against those cuts in the long term, but you have to allow for the third sector to start fulfilling those roles and have a transition, because, you know, you can't just, personally, I don't think you can just leave the most fun. And that just made them unpopular and made it look like they were, you know, they really were living up to the reputation of hating the poor. There's a lot of things that they could cut. There was a lot of things that they could cut. In fact, they wouldn't even need to make big cuts if they liberalised the economy. If you liberalise the provision of healthcare, so that private healthcare comes down in expense, then more people will get private healthcare, so there'll be less of a burden on the NHS. If you liberalise the education sector of the economy, more people will be able to afford private education, so less people will need public schools. Those are ways that you can actually lower spending without making brutal cuts.
Okay, but then David Cameron won his election
on the platform of austerity.
On that platform of austerity, you know. So I don't think it's austerity itself. I think there's all sorts of reasons why this vote's flitting about. You know, I don't agree that it's some sort of Remainer backlash. Right. I don't think it's that. I just think there was a massive resurgence in the Labour Party. I think for the first time, a lot of students, a lot of young people came out and voted. Possibly a lot of older people who were worried about getting, you know, their benefits cut. I think what the Labour Party done is they mobilised. The Tory Party didn't mobilise. No, they took it for granted. That's what you did. You fucked it. You fucked it and you took it for granted. You thought, we're going to walk this. And that is always a bad mistake.
If they fought the fight, then they could have wiped the floor with the Labour Party. They missed their opportunity.
Yeah, they didn't turn up to the fight.
They didn't. So,
or rather, Theresa May didn't turn up to the fight.
Is there anything
else?
And
I think she was badly advised. And I think her advisors at least must go. Whether she goes or not, I don't know. I heard an extraordinary interview on Radio 4 this morning with a former cabinet secretary. I can't remember the guy's name, forgive me, because I wasn't going to talk about this. But he gave the most an indictment of Theresa May that I have never heard a former cabinet secretary make of a prime minister, a serving prime minister, in my life. I mean, okay, he's a former cabinet secretary, but it was an absolute indictment. It was damning. I mean, the language that he used, even Jim Naughtie, Jim Naughtie with his naughtiness, who is a veteran BBC political pundit, was aghast at the things this guy said, and if I can find it for you while Antony's on another one of his monologues, I'll do that, because it's worth listening to. And I think she has definitely fucked it. I think this is the election that could end Theresa May. It could end Brexit. Please God, no, but it could. I think Nicola Sturgeon of the SNP in Scotland could go down in history as the woman who fucked independence. I mean, Alex Salmond, in football terms, basically got the ball right to the goal line without a goalkeeper, and there it is, hen, kick it in.
Right.
And she fucked it.
I think it was five years too early, the referendum.
Yeah, could have been.
Anyway, we wanted to speak. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that dismissively, but we did plan ahead to speak about Philip Davies.
Phil Davies, and the legend.
And we're going to have a guest, I think, joining us for 10 minutes to discuss it. But because you're so, I mean, I was really pleased about this myself, but you can fill them in, because this is something that
Phil
really
Davies
is
he's a Conservative MP for Shipley East, I think it is, in Yorkshire. Shipley, we'll call it Shipley in Yorkshire, and he has a track record for being the most rebellious MP in Parliament. He has defied the Tory whip. He's defied the party line over 250 times.
Wow,
I think
that's a lot.
Yeah, he doesn't give a mind. He has a track record. I don't agree with everything he has to say, but he says what he thinks, and he got himself onto the Women's Equality Committee. He got
himself into the Women's Equality
Committee in Parliament. He got himself onto that to the chagrin of many feminists. They were spitting nails over that, and he got himself on it, and he continually frustrates them. He has filibustered for up to 90 minutes to try and stop legislation going through, like acts about. I mean, on paper, this legislation looks like, oh, who could disagree with that? Violence against women. Well, hang on a minute. Surely violence against anybody is wrong, So it kind of prioritizes the wrong way, and he made that point. So he's made himself unpopular. He's a bit of a pantomime villain. The Women's Equality Party in the UK, that's a relatively new party, started by Sandy Toksvig, who's a TV personality. They put up their leader of the party, Sophie Walker, in his constituency. And at 3 o'clock this morning, I was listening, the Huffington Post was practically having parties and celebrating Phil Davies's demise. And guess what? It didn't happen. He retained his seat. So up yours, Huffington Post, and up yours, Sophie Walker, because you lost your deposit. And I think we are ready for our guest.
So
she's champing at the bit to go on. I can see
someone who has spoken to Philip Davies for her YouTube channel, The Liberty Bells. My friend Elizabeth Hobson is here to discuss this with us and tell us what she thinks. Hi, Elizabeth. How are you?
Hey, gentlemen. Yeah, I'm tired. I stayed up the whole night watching the election with my mother-in-law, actually.
Oh, that's nice.
That's nice. Well, it depends how well you get on with your mother-in-law.
Can I just say, I don't know about Antony, but I'm definitely not a gentleman. I don't own land and I don't have a coat of arms, and some people would say I'm not even a very nice guy. But there you go.
I think he's nice. He's not a very nice guy.
You know how we feel about terms of endearment these days, anyway.
Yeah, I can't believe you degrade us by calling us gentlemen. Next thing I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, like dear.
I may be a gentleman, but I'm not a gentleman.
Yes.
So tell us, you said you weren't like, I was like, I have to say, I thought that Sophie Walker is a pernicious person, and for that reason, I was happy that she lost her deposit. But you said you weren't celebrating with any Schadenfreude about it, and why is that?
Oh no, I lied. It was absolute Schadenfreude. Absolute.
All right.
Oh, you were being sarcastic.
I absolutely loved it. I've been like trolling all kinds of feminists online, just saying 1.9% hashtag slow clap. But yeah, I mean, I was taking part in a group discussion on Facebook, and when the Huffington Post started calling his defeat, and everyone on Twitter was going crazy with it, and I was just like,
anymore? Did they take it down?
I was like, I kept refreshing the BBC page, and I was like, nothing is showing on the BBC page. There's nothing showing. There's nothing showing. and I was still just a little bit hopeful. And then when the news broke, I was just absolutely
great
made up. It's
because
such
I mean
news
that was the most
anybody
depressing news of the night. Well, not news. Yeah, depressing thing of the night for me was actually when I read that Huffington Post thing and they were all celebrating. I was like, oh God, please no, not Phil. But when I found out that he actually retained his seat this morning, I was so happy. Not so much for him, but just the Huffington Post. You know, if ever, you know, do not count your chickens before they hatch. I wonder, has the Huffington Post ever heard of that expression? I bet you they fucking know it now.
So, Elizabeth, it's
been a complete defeat of the mainstream media as well, though, because the mainstream media has been absolutely relentless in their attacks on him, calling him misogynist and the terrible things that he's done, many of which are actually libertarian things. So he's like campaigned, you know, he's spoken out against the minimum wage, particularly against the minimum wage for disabled people who might not be able to offer that kind of value to a company.
Right.
Yeah, but when the press reports that, what they'll say is, Phil Davies comes out against minimum wage for disabled people, and people think, what a bastard. You know, they don't say, well, minimum wage for disabled people because it means less disabled people will actually be able to find jobs.
Right.
You know, they don't explain that. So,
Elizabeth, you, speaking about mainstream media slandering, you've got some pretty bad heat from media recently. I mean, you've been called like a right-wing extremist, and I mean, I have to say, you look pretty extreme. I'm not gonna lie, you do look pretty extreme. I can just see, you know, you kicking the crap out of an ethnic minority. Sorry.
I said I'm a Kekistani SS officer.
Right, exactly. All right, okay. So tell us a little bit about that and what.
Basically, an outlet called Hope Not Hate, who are basically the friendly face of Antifa here, have put out an article, Davies, for his links to extreme far-right people such as Ladies for Philip Davies, friends. And it's like this article that goes into all this guilt by association because we've done talks at various places and we've met various people at various times.
I mean, shock horror, you give a presentation.
No quotes from us, because there are no quotes from us that are proof that we're far right.
I mean,
but there's no comments on it. We responded to him the day it came out and he won't publish that. So we've written him a letter which we're going to publish on a blog publicly. And we're just sending something off to Heat Street as well. The Guardian have been in touch, but when they got a response from us, I think they were hoping that we were going to say, I was going to say, oh yes, I am an emerging voice of the far right, actually. Seemed to have lost interest when I didn't.
And here's the thing, it's like you had the audacity to give a presentation suggesting that parents should not be slicing parts of their infants' penises off, you know. And apparently that was a point of contention for this poster that you'd given a talk against circumcision.
Anti-Semitic.
Right.
He used that and our anti-feminism as like pejoratives. Yeah,
but I mean, this being what does that even mean? Like, oh, she's an anti-feminist. It's like going, oh, that person is a, you know. Why is the presumption that that is a bad thing? Like,
well, because the presumption is that feminism is a good thing.
Right.
So who would, and it's about equality, and therefore anybody who'd be against that must be.
Do you say that you're an anti-feminist or a non-feminist?
The group is mixed, but I say I'm an anti-feminist, and I say that because I'm a men's rights activist in a hurry.
Okay.
Feminism as being the major block to equality, and you see that, you know, in pieces of legislation like the Istanbul Convention, which was a completely feminist piece of legislation.
Okay.
And thank God we've got Philip there to, you know, tell the truth about these things, because he's the only man who will. And I would like to make a point. You said he filibusters, but he doesn't. It's actually illegal to filibuster in the House of Commons. You have to talk on the topic without repeating yourself, or the speaker will ask you to sit down.
Right. Okay. But it's still kind of filibuster. I mean, aren't we splitting hairs here? I don't know.
Filibustering in the States is like you can stand there and read the phone book.
All right. And you can't do that. You can't do that in the UK Parliament.
So
no, nothing like.
All right, so I just lost you there for a bit. Can I ask you, as a libertarian myself, I find, and I follow the manosphere, but I find the concept of men's rights as absurd as I find the concept of women's rights. I think there are only individual rights and they're universal. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would agree with that. However, I would say that men as a demographic are lacking in some rights, and so, you know, like up until the 60s, women were lacking in some political rights, and so there was a women's liberation movement, although it's always been slightly toxic because there's always been two sides to it. I see a need for the men's rights movement because men are lacking in some rights, or I mean, they are and they aren't, because if you look at circumcision is illegal in the UK. It's been illegal since the Offences Against the Person Act 1861, but the CPS just turn a blind eye.
Okay. Right. Wow, that's amazing.
Well, circumcision is a bigger subject.
Yeah, I mean, we need equality in the administration of the law rather than...
In fact, we have a libertarian who who's a friend of ours and has defended circumcision in the group once. I didn't take the conversation to Zenith, but perhaps we can have both of you on one of these days to discuss it, and we'll moderate. But yeah, we'll have to get you on this show we'll have to get a whole show for you one of these days, Elizabeth. You should tell everyone where they can find your media and your YouTube channel.
Okay, yeah, our YouTube channel is called The Liberty Bells, and the is very important because if you just look up Liberty Bells, you get some cheerleaders.
Right.
Right. Well, that's not so bad.
Well, yeah, it's not
the worst thing you could get.
I prefer that. There's only one video. Oh no, there's 2 videos I think on our channel at the moment. And on Facebook, we've got a page under Liberty Bells, and we've got one under Ladies for Philip Davies. Fun.
Okay, great. And you've got an interview with Philip Davies on your channel for anyone who wants to follow that up. And Tom actually strolled onto that interview and emailed it to me, not realizing that we were already pals. And so that just shows that you're getting out to people already. Okay, so thanks for joining us, however briefly, and I'm sure we'll have you for a longer visit in the future.
Pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.
You too. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye. So, is there anything that you'd like to discuss before we wrap up the show for today?
Well, I just wanted to discuss if I do go into the Liberty Bells and get cheerleaders, is it going to be male or female cheerleaders? Because George W. Bush was a cheerleader, and I find the thought of that quite horrific. Anyway, so they've got that. Well, yeah. Just finally on the Phil Davies thing for me, we haven't done our cuckold doodle dude for a while. Cuckold doodle dude! And my cuckold dude, my nomination for cuckold doodle dude for this week, drum roll maestro, please, is David Lammy, MP.
David Lammy, MP.
Yeah, David Lammy. David Lammy. I've got his Wikipedia page here. David Lyndon Lammy is a British Labour Party politician who has been Member of Parliament for Tottenham since 2000. I believe he took over from a guy called Bernie Grant. For those of you who don't remember Bernie Grant was a lovely old man who said that all white people are racist. And I think that David Lammy is much in the same mould as Bernie Grant. However, my beef with them is when it was announced wrongly by the Huffington Post, amongst others, that Phil Davies had lost his seat in Shipley. David Lammy tweeted, and this is David Lammy's tweet: "Apparently Philip Davies is in trouble in Shipley. Couldn't happen to a nicer bloke. Women and everyone who isn't a sexist bigot, rejoice." Okay, I hope you can qualify that, David. I mean, if I was Phil Davies,
can we sue him for slander?
bad look, slander or defamation, whatever it is. I think. And by the way, David Lammy's got previous for tweeting things. He lambasted the BBC in a tweet once, saying that they made a veiled racist joke about the colour of when they elected the new Pope, about the colour of the smoke. New Pope, will it be black smoke or will it be white smoke? And people educated them that that's normal procedure in the Catholic Church, that they have black smoke if they've elected the Pope, and white smoke if or is it the other way around? But anyway, they do something with the smoke, and if the Pope gets elected, they change the colour of the smoke, and it's black or white. And David Lammy just waded in right away, completely ignorant, okay, even though he's went to Harvard, okay? I don't give a fuck if he's went to Harvard, Cambridge, and Oxford, okay? If you have no self-awareness, you're a fucking idiot in my book.
So David
Lammy, just for your comments about Phil Davis, you are my cuckold-diddle-dude for this week. And hopefully maybe you even get cuckold-diddle-dude of the year, but you're up against some stiff opposition, I'll tell you that now.
There you go. So with that said, we've lambasted the right, we've lambasted the left,
and even those in the middle,
and even those
and
in
even
the middle,
some libertarians,
because you need to just turn your back and walk away from this corrupt political spectrum. We need a political spectrum that that measures things in terms of liberty versus non-liberty, and then we can have a proper fucking discussion, not to ganging up against the against liberalism, basically. So what are the prospects for liberty for the UK? Is there any hope? Is there any hope that this coalition of anti-human lefties and righties, anti-human
greenos,
people who want us to be children for our whole lives, people who aren't interested in creating a society that can empower people to be independent?
No, don't want independent people.
Do we have any hope? Will this in any way produce a swing back and a grassroots desire for more liberty, free markets, non-interventionist policy, and civil liberties?
Okay, well, hope springs eternal. However, I am not. I'm not optimistic. I don't think so. I even as a libertarian, I'm a libertarian because I believe it's right. Okay, I don't think this libertopia is gonna. I hate that word actually, because we don't believe in utopias. Utopias are a bad thing. Okay, but this libertarian world that we all crave, I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to go from bad to worse. I personally think all we can hope to do is hold back the tide, fight the good fight, and try and preserve liberty for as long as we can. And so that in the years to come, maybe when they dig up the remains of our civilization, they can say, these people fucked. You know that bit at the end of Planet of the Apes? You know, when Charlton Heston's going, you fucked. Well, he doesn't say you fucked it up. You know, you blew it all up. You blew it all up. Right? So when they find the ruins of a civilization, and it's good. Was anybody kicking and screaming against this? Was anybody trying to fight against this? And they'll hopefully be able to history will record that libertarians were fighting against it, that spoke out against it, and tried to turn back this statist, illiberal tide that's engulfing us. And I would also just urge everybody out there that listens, and anybody that you know, don't take anything that we say for granted here. Do your own homework, get online, check it out. Check out Phil Davis, check out libertarianism, check out some Bastiat, who's a libertarian, check out everything we say. And if we're wrong on anything, we're happy to be corrected. Leave your comments
below. And please, if you're a regular listener, I want to ask you a question. Please do identify your favorite episode of this show and send it to a couple of people who haven't heard it before. We used to be doing above 500 hits a week on SoundCloud, and it's come down from there a lot, which I don't know why, because I think the show is getting better and better. So please don't, if you love this show, please don't keep it to yourself. Don't tune in every week and dig it but not share it. Like, share the show. We'd like to get more high-profile guests on for you. And
tell us what you like, what you don't like, who you'd like to see on the show.
We very rarely hear from you, but we'd love to hear from you. So send us an email at scottishlibertypodcast@gmail.com, telling us what you like and what you don't like. On that optimistic note that you left everyone out there with, be libertarians. Don't be a lefty.
And don't be a righty anymore either.
See you later.